Hi everyone, this is Matt. Welcome back to my channel. So today I want to talk to you about reading research papers. And oh my god, this is so difficult because research papers are just full of information. Every sentence is jam-packed. And when I was a PhD student in my early days, it used to take me at least an hour and a half to read a paper. And if I had a weekend when I have to read maybe five of them, 10 of them, then my whole weekend was gone just reading papers. Meanwhile, my principal investigator was just, reading tens of them every day, every week, and was maybe spending at most 15 minutes per paper. So, how did they manage to do this? This is what I want to teach you today. So, I want to tell you about the magic tricks, how principal investigators read papers in 15 minutes, and also how you can use AI, how you can use software to help yourself to manage to actually read papers that quickly without spending years and years of gaining experience. So let's go. First of all, the software that you can use is ChatPDF and a software reference manager. Unfortunately, right now there is no AI available that will help you read a paper quickly, that will skim through a paper and give you the key information. But I'm sure give it a bit of time and this will become publicly available. For now, we have ChatPDF and we have software reference managers. And also, I'm gonna now tell you exactly how PIs read papers and how then you can use ChatPDF to supplement what you're doing to make sure that you can read faster, that you can understand and remember this information for later so that it's actually usable. But let's start with how I used to do it in my early days. So it used to be so frustrating because I would work in the lab, Friday or Saturday would come, and then I would go to PubMed and I would search for RNA DNA hybrids. My PhD was about RNA DNA hybrids, and PubMed would bring me maybe 5, 10 papers that were just published in the last week, and then I would spend a whole weekend reading them. And it was just so time consuming and so difficult. And I really wanted to find a way to make it happen faster. So I actually started talking to principal investigators, asking them how they read papers. And this is how it actually majorly changed for me. So, first of all, the first mistake I was doing, I was reading whole papers. These guys never read a whole paper. This is like absolute mistake. So they only skim through papers. More than that, they don't even read the results of a discussion of the introduction. They only read the abstract and they look at the figures. And the reason for that is that to read an abstract is going to take you 30 seconds, maybe a minute at most. But at this point, you will understand whether it's worth reading this paper or not, whether it's worth your time or not. Okay? So that's really important. And then they only look at the figures simply because they used to tell me something which I found quite funny. What if the people who wrote this paper were wrong? What if their interpretation of the results is wrong? You need to think for yourself, Matt. You need to look at this data and come up with your own conclusions. Maybe your conclusions will be better than these people. Maybe maybe they did something that actually doesn't, they said something that doesn't fit your own data. So you better just look at the data, look at the figures, and see how it fits with the data you have or with the knowledge you have. This is the way to go forward. And if you really have time, if you're really interested in the paper, then you might as well read a little bit more, maybe discussion. But that's all. That's all they used to read. So I took this on board, and now I'm going to tell you how I adapted this. First of all, I noticed they used to read papers every day. So I found an option on PubMed that PubMed can send you notifications, email notifications every day with any papers published with your keywords. So for me, this was RNA DNA hybrids. And from this moment on, I started receiving daily emails from PubMed with any new papers. And I would only get the title, the abstract, and a link to the paper. Okay? So every day, as I get the email, I read the email and I decide whether it's worth reading this paper or not. Okay? As simple as that. Then, if I actually decided that it's worth reading this paper, I would open this paper and read it on the day. I wouldn't wait until the weekend. Because again, when I had a pile of papers, it was taking me too much time. So it was better to divide the task as the papers were coming. So I would, now at this point, I used to use software reference manager, and at the time I used to use Mendeley. Now I use Zotero. I love both of them. I don't have a preference. Um, but I was introduced to Mendeley first, so this is what I used to do. So first of all, to streamline the whole process, Mendeley has a plugin for your internet browser. So with a single click, you can download the paper and it goes straight into your Mendeley desktop. And that's brilliant um, because it will also go into your Mendeley app on your phone. So you can read the papers straight away, either, when you're commuting, maybe you're on a bus, on a tram or whatever. You can read the paper on your phone, you can read it on your paper. Either way, that's brilliant. And then when you're actually writing your papers, your thesis, then Mendeley and Zotero as well have word plugins for referencing, which makes your life so much easier as well to do this. So I would totally recommend this. And now the most important thing is when I would open these papers in Mendeley and I would read them there. And I would highlight what I thought was important and I would leave notes. And Mendeley allows you to create subfolders, make catalogs with these papers and also make notes. And the other thing that I noticed about these PIs is that they would only make a couple of notes, bullet points per paper, with absolutely key information. And it's true. If you try to remember more than that, you will forget. So you only need to remember the key information from these figures that is really relevant to you. And you can make these bullet points in Mendeley. That's absolutely fine, also in Zotero as well. So then later when you come back, when you need to remember something, first of all, you will create a catalog in Mendeley where you have these papers. So for example, I'll be looking at RNA DNA hybrids. And for example, I would have a folder with how they cause neurodegeneration. Um, and I would just look into that folder and I would have all the relevant papers there. And I would open a paper and it would I would click on the paper and it would immediately show me on the right hand side the notes, a couple of bullet points. So it was really easy in this way. It was really easy to then memorize and recall later what was going on. And this is exactly what my PI used to do. And the man had tens of thousands of papers in his Mendeley. And the only reason he was able to actually make this workable for him is because he had so many folders and subfolders and just a couple of bullet points per paper. So this is the way to go. And then you can say, okay, fine, Matt, but I need to read this paper. I need to look at these figures. I need to understand them. And this is where ChatPDF comes. So the beauty of ChatPDF is that you can just upload a PDF paper to it and ask it any questions and it will explain things to you. So if you're looking at the paper and there are bits of a paper that you don't understand from the figure itself and you have to read the text and you don't fully understand the text, then you can ask ChatPDF about it and it will summarize it for you and it will give you an answer in an easy digestible language. So it's gonna make your life so much easier. So if there is anything you don't understand about the figure, what you really need to focus on, what you need to spend your time on, is methods. You need to understand the methods, the techniques, what these people are doing, because as you go from one paper to the next, people are repeating the same methods. They are constantly doing the same thing. If they are doing something extra, something extraordinary, then they will probably create a figure about it and they will explain it to you using pictures. What is the new thing they're using? However, if it's just a bog standard method that was repeated 1,000 times before, then you might as well spend extra time to understand this method. So then you can look at the picture, and as we all know, as we know from an advert, a picture is worth more than 1,000 words. So then you look at the figure, you look at these pictures, and you know the methods, you understand them, and you immediately know what this figure is telling you. Now, if there is anything about the background that you don't understand, you might as well read the introduction as well, a little bit of it at least. Because remember, the beginning of each introduction will be very broad, very vague, and then it will narrow down. So actually what you really need to read, if you don't understand the nitty gritty details of the topic, you need to read that bit towards the end, because this is where the most substance lies. The detail is there. So you read this and you look at the figures and you scan through the figures. And what I used to do to myself, which I think was a really, really good exercise, is that I would read a figure, I would look at the figure, try to understand it, and then ask myself, okay, Matt, what would you do next? What would be the next experiment you would design, you would do? And then I would look at the next figure. And as the time passed, I was like, oh my God, they're doing exactly what I would do. So this really helps with you gaining confidence of understanding what the data represents, what it means. And in the same way, it helps you read faster. So remember, try to spend more time looking at the figures rather than reading. If you need to read, prioritize the methods. If you need to fully understand something which you don't understand, then ask ChatPDF. But ideally, if you follow this, then it will take you 15 to 20 minutes per paper, and then it will be really easy to find this information and find the key bullet points from this paper using a software reference manager like Mendeley or Zotero. And that's it. And that's exactly what my PI was doing and what my PhD advisors were doing. And then as I moved to my to postdocing and so on, I was talking to other academics. Literally everyone is doing this. They're just skimming through the papers. They're not using any AI actually because they didn't even know about this. They were just skimming papers and using Mendeley or Zotero and looking at the figures, and that's it. So I hope this is going to help you. I hope you will, by following this, you will manage to read papers in 15-20 minutes. And if you have any tips or tricks for reading research papers quickly and effectively, let me know. Let me know in the comments. And please subscribe to the channel if you benefit from this content, and I'll see you in the next one.